Indeed we could, Jonathan, but the headline, I guess, from that session is that if the race finishes as it starts, Sebastian Vettel remains in the hunt for the world title, and we can now see the result from the qualifying session. Have you ever known such a stop-start and interrupted session as that, Eddie?
I haven't really, and you know, Mark is beside us. I've never seen a driver having to sit out like we've had in this session. Mark Webber, of course, crashing in the earlier session. It's disturbing. It takes away from the flow of the situation, but it still was very exciting right to the very last moment, last car, and it was a surprise. I think Vettel did an unbelievably good job.
And the number of drivers, of course, David, failing to even post lap times at the start of sessions, just sending the car straight off the road.
Yeah, this is a very challenging track, as we've spoken about, and it's very narrow and not much room for error in the runoff areas. And once you get in the gravel, of course, they're not able to pull the car back on track, so a lot more incidents than we normally see. Well,
Mark Webber has joined us, and I guess mixed emotions for Mark. If you're only just tuning in, Mark didn't take part in qualifying after an accident in the final part of practice. Mixed emotions, because I guess you're delighted that your teammate is there on pole position, but you had to sit and watch that from inside the motor, and when you know that you've got the engineering underneath you, to have probably been right there with him.
Yeah, I don't know about much mixed emotions, but pretty down at the moment. But yeah, it was really unfortunate that the chassis was damaged this morning, because I was very, very surprised we couldn't take part in qualifying with the damage we had. So that's what really put us back. Obviously, we lost a bit of run this morning, but yeah, to miss out on all of quali because of that was a real shame. As you say, the car's very quick here, so and starting in the pit lane tomorrow is going to be a mountain to climb.
OK, we'll talk more about Sebastian Vettel's chances. We'll try and put a smile on your face by talking about the championship and Red Bull in the same sentence before too long. But Fernando Alonso came into this race weekend as the real headline setter. Of course, he's agreed to join Ferrari as of next season. However, the headline for him from qualifying is that he starts the race in 12th position. Seriously disappointing for Fernando, and we can now hear from him.
Fernando, it was a very interrupted session out there for everyone, but just how caught out by the yellows were you at the end?
Well, I think everybody was improving their times, and I was doing as well, but with a front wing in the middle of the track, obviously I back off. People didn't, so we've been out of Q3, but we see what happened this afternoon.
We've seen several big accidents out there today and a few near ones too. Just tell us about the conditions of the track.
Yeah, the conditions were fine. I think it's just a coincidence, you know, everybody is pushing to the limits in qualifying. And unfortunately some people went off, but I think they are okay. That's the most important thing.
Well, Fernando Alonso says it's drivers probably pushing a bit too much. David, do you even agree with that sentiment?
Well, you've gone off the circuit, so either that, they've run out of talent at the crucial moment, but you've got to push around this track. It's a track that rewards hustling, and we were talking with Mark during the session, you know, that first sector. Apparently Dunlop, which is a fast left-hander up the hill, is taken absolutely flat out this year with the slick tyres, and you know the speed and the G they must be pulling through there is immense.
I'm sure that you would have loved the chance to have been hustling your car around there today. Do you agree with Fernando's sentiment? Because we heard from someone in the pit lane earlier who said that, you know, perhaps there are other factors for this. We know it's a very windy day. Maybe some drivers were spooked by seeing people going off the track all the time. It was an unusually messy qualifying session. What do you think?
Timo's was unusual. The other ones weren't that unusual. You know, a lot of cars, Heikki, both Torossos and myself had the same situation in turn 8, where if you just get a bit wide, that curb, you can't steer the car. And looks like similar with Boemi. Obviously, if you get a bit behind the curb, the cars are very low and the curbs are very difficult. So the track's designed for you to stay on it. So if you get a little bit out of it, it's easy to have a moment here.
Perhaps a lack of pre-qualifying running, so they couldn't get the cars properly tuned into the circuit.
Maybe a little bit of that. You know, seeing where the limits are. But you know, we know this place is not spoilt for runoff in certain areas, but that's the way it is.
OK, well, let's now hear from Ross Brawn. His drivers aren't necessarily exactly where he would have liked them on the grid, but it's a better showing than we saw just 7 days ago in Singapore. Let's hear from Ross.
Well, Ross, qualifying's always fraught at the best of times. How was it to keep your focus during that one?
Difficult, but of course the same for everybody. So very, very messy session. We had a good balance on low fuel and not such a good balance on high fuel at the end, so the contrary to what we normally find. So I think as we missed that first run in high fuel qualifying, we weren't able to make any adjustments for the second run, so wasn't a great qualifying.
So do you feel that Jensen's position is out of position? He should have done better, or with the fuel load you've got, that's about right?
Well, we're about 17 laps. I don't know what the others have done, so we won't know until. But I don't think we did the lap time we thought we could do on that fuel load.
Okay, final question. Friday was raining, so we only had an hour of setup time today. Why do you think we saw so many people crashing today?
Well, to be honest, the quick balance here is a very neutral, maybe even a slightly oversteer balance. It's a problem we've been having in T1. We've had a little bit too much understeer, but understeer is safe. And I think people are just pushing the balance right to the edge to get quick times in T1, and it's costing them in other places.
So the old engineer's adage, you'll never crash with understeer, but you might with oversteer.
That's the problem, but oversteer is the quick setup here.
Okay, thanks, Ross.
Well, Eddie, a week ago, David said he thinks that Ross Brawn might be somehow related to Houdini because he keeps on pulling it out of the bag and performing a magic trick during the race. But again, a disappointing qualifying session. And Ross did say coming into this that they've solved their qualifying issues. They don't seem to have done, though.
Well, he's still a relaxed man. He's got two cars in one piece. He's got two very, the wily old boys. They're there, and they'll pick up very good points. They'll win the Constructors' title here tomorrow, and they've got a very cool, calculating team boss. Ross Brawn is fantastic.
So Eddie thinks it's all good news. Rubens Barrichello, he starts 5th. Jenson Button starts 7th. And don't forget, Rubens Barrichello is very keen indeed to take some points off his teammate as Kimi Räikkönen wanders down the paddock just behind us. Let's now hear from the two Brawn drivers.
Jenson, not the usual qualifying sessions that we're used to. It's a pretty big war of attrition out there, but P7 for yourself, how do you feel about that?
It's okay. I mean, it was a tough session for everyone. We didn't get much practice. Nobody got any practice this morning, very little. Sorry, yesterday, and we got very little this morning, so it's tough for everyone. And 3 accidents, 3 red flags in quali is very, very unusual. So I hope everyone's okay. Myself, yeah, I was reasonably happy with the car, especially on low fuel. But on higher fuel, the car wasn't working so well. So there you go, I'm P7. But I think we got a reasonable amount of fuel on board. I saved as much as I could on the laps without being too slow. So yeah, it's good.
Everyone thinks you're racing Rubens, but of course you've still got the Red Bull of Sebastian Vettel to contend with. P1 is probably not what you're hoping for him over this weekend.
I'm not looking at Sebastian really. I mean, they've been very quick all weekend. In Q1 and Q2, I think they're about half a second quicker than us. So that's where it is. And all my time losses in Sector 1. Change of direction with this car is very difficult. And we found that here. We pretty much expected it, and we've got what we expected. But the second and third sectors, the car's working very well. So it is what it is, and we've got to make the best out of the situation we're in, and hopefully we're doing that. Thanks.
Rubens, P5 for tomorrow. A difficult qualifying session for everybody out there, but you out-qualified Jenson. Was that the main aim?
Well, it was. I mean, at the end, it was tough to see if we were going to get at the front. I mean, it looked like there was some cars quicker than us, and I'm happy. My Q1 and Q2 times show they were slower than Jenson. So to beat him on the same fuel level for Q3, it is an aim that I've reached. So it's very little, I know, because at the end of the day we're fighting for pole position. But that's when you don't have the car to win. That's what you gotta aim.
You don't know about Vettel, but in comparison to Jenson, do you think you're sitting pretty for tomorrow's race?
Well, in comparison to JB, yeah, we have pretty much the same level of fuel, so I'll be fine. But in comparison with some guys at the front, I don't know. We didn't have a very competitive session.
But as we noticed today, experience around this track counts for so much, and at least you have that as well.
Yeah, but it's a track that, it's a fantastic track. It's equal the best with Spa and Silverstone, but it's still very dangerous. I mean, they have to do something for Suzuka, because although reservice was a lot better, we need to have more escape areas and things like this. We could see that with some inexperience with the Toro Rosso, they went off, and so it's pretty dangerous out there still.
Best of luck,
thank you.
Well, it's rare to hear a Formula One driver talk about danger. That's a word they kind of like to avoid. But the good news is that we're hearing that Timo Glock has got what's been described as an abrasion to the left upper leg. And this is testament to Formula One safety, and great news for Timo, a guy that you gave your debut to in Formula One.
Well, not alone that, but the safety has made it possible, hopefully, fingers crossed, that he might even be considering racing tomorrow, and that's what we want to see.
Well, the news is he may well be racing tomorrow. Sebastian Vettel, he's looking good to keep himself in the hunt for the championship.
Yeah, as we said at the beginning of the show, he needs to win this race if he's going to have any chance. It's an outside chance, but he's got himself pole position, so good day's work.
OK, and finally, Mark, you'll be starting from where you don't want, either the back or the pit lane. What can you do from there?
Do my best. Hopefully it's not too boring, following other people around, and might watch the MotoGP. But unfortunately it's not Julian Ryder and Toby Moody commentating. But anyway.
I'm not sure even the MotoGP would make you smile at the moment. But thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget, you can see a rerun of qualifying this afternoon, 1 o'clock on BBC One, and the race is live 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. What a dramatic qualifying session from Japan. And that's just for starters. See you tomorrow.